Deep in the Canadian woods, Wolf 10 grew up surrounded by family. Parents, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters. He was never alone. Their ancestors had roamed this land for 400,000 years, living and hunting as one. Boldest of them all, 10 always led the way.
The biological world can be thought of as occurring at different levels, a bottom level, a mid-level, and a top level. The bottom level is the producers. Those are plants. They produce energy for other animals to eat, called the consumers. Above them, you have another level of consumers. They're the carnivores. And so this is divided into different trophic levels. We can go a trophic level below, and those are the decomposers. We could go another trophic level above, and that would be another layer of meat eaters. So you have all these different layers to nature, and they interact. And a big debate is everything we see out there, why is it that way? Some people feel it's from bottom-up forces, and that means that the sun flows into the plants, and the plants turn that into food, and then the herbivores eat that, and then the carnivores eat them. And so it's a bottom-up flow. Others argue that it's a top-down flow. The predators set the number of the herbivores set the amount of vegetation. And when you get factors at top affecting factors at the bottom, they're not directly connected. Wolves don't eat plants, but elk do. So if wolves eat elk, and by eating elk it affects plants, that's an indirect flow of events, and that's called a trophic cascade.
The strange sound was their only warning.
Ready, ready.
Yellowstone is the world's first national park. And at that time, in 1872, there really was not a clear policy or vision for what parks were about other than preserving the land. And so all predators were killed at that time. The idea of a good animal and a bad animal was very much part of our thinking. And wolves, cougars, coyotes, lynx, bobcat, wolverines, were considered bad. So all the wolves were eliminated in Yellowstone by 1926. During the time of wolf absence and cougar absence, low bear numbers, the elk population built up to very high numbers, too many elk. That affects many elements of ecosystem functioning, the bird populations, the amphibian, reptile, fish populations, willow, aspen, and cottonwood were all affected because of kind of a out of whack system. Now, we want to recreate Yellowstone as best we can based on the way it was before it was changed by European humans. So we reintroduced the wolves in 1995 and 1996. We got 14 wolves from Alberta, and 17 wolves from British Columbia.
You got 39.1.
Bewildered, 10 woke to a new world. For the first time, a fence stood in his way. His pack was gone, and his only comfort was a shy new female known as 9.
So what did wolves encounter when they're released? A destabilized ecosystem. What we've seen on the northern range is nothing short of a spectacular change brought about probably by wolves helping reduce the elk population. We have a leaner, meaner elk herd. I mean, they're healthier, stronger, better condition. Wolves have been gone from Yellowstone roughly 70 years, but elk had evolved with wolves for hundreds of thousands of years. Wolves were gone for a very short time in that evolutionary history. Their adaptation to wolves back on the landscape was very rapid.
Finally free, 10 called to his new mate. For the first time in 70 years, Yellowstone echoed with their song.
The interesting thing about all things in nature is it's hard to pull any one thing out and have it not connected to everything else. And so when I talk about wolf impacts on elk and elk impacts on vegetation, I'm just talking about one series of lines. There's all sorts of things that can be connected because elk eat willow, but songbirds use willow. Willow shades streams, cools the water, which helps the trout, and on. When wolves kill an elk, even though they eat everything they can, they don't get it all. And you got ravens, magpies, golden eagles, bald eagles, coyotes that hit every carcass. We've documented up to 12 vertebrate scavengers using wolf kills. And we've documented hundreds of species of beetles using wolf carcasses. And then, of course, you get nutrient surges into the soil. So everything's connected. When you pull the wolf out, you pull the cougar out, you reduce the bears, all those lines get erased or altered. And so we've put them back and all those lines are restored. If you didn't have predators, you would have these animals that eat plants, and they would be unchecked, and they would eat all the plants. There would be no green. So the world is green because you have predators limiting herbivores who eat plants. Having wolves back really does change the way Yellowstone functions in multiplicity of ways.
With spring just around the corner and 9 tucked away in their den, 10 searched for food. He never knew when he crossed the border of the park.
Wolves in the park are used to people, and the people pursue them. We have a cottage industry of people following wolves around, probably more so than any other wildlife. And so they get used to people. They tolerate having people nearby. So what happens when wolves like that leave the park? They're easier to kill. You can't communicate to the wolf where the rules change. Wolf number 10 was a very prescient animal because what happened to him is kind of what's happening to wolves now. He was very bold, and with his mate upon release, he left the park. And within 6 weeks was dead. We live in very much human-dominated landscapes. And when you leave a place like Yellowstone's Northern Range, the landscape looks like it does because of what people do to it. So we have to ask ourselves the question, how much competition are we willing to accept? How big of an area are we willing to allow these predators to come back? Many people are arguing that the return of the wolf in any numbers is going to affect the ecosystem, and that's not true. Just having wolves on the landscape is not enough to get these strong ecological changes. But getting wolves back to their natural densities, then the effect of wolves is much stronger. We've got to ask, is it right to completely take over the world so species that are hard to live with don't have any place left? So allowing places for wolves, grizzly bears, cougars to live is largely an ethical decision.
Generations later, nearly all the wolves in Yellowstone are direct descendants of 10. His sons and daughters went on to found new packs and helped change the face of the park. While 10's life was cut short, his memory and spirit live on today in the playful pups of each new spring.